Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Dear students, welcome back. Today I am here with a new lecture, and today's topic is Shakespeare and Shakespearean Tragedy. Today we are going to talk about short biography of Shakespeare, and then we'll talk about the characteristics of Shakespearean tragedy. That what are the features or the basic characteristics of Shakespearean tragedy? Because our next, book, our next drama that we are going to read is Hamlet. So before reading that drama, it is very necessary to know about the characteristics of a Shakespearean tragedy, and we must have some knowledge about Shakespeare's biography. That's how he spent his life, and in fact, his life is very mysterious. There are so many ambiguities about his events of life, but still we need to know what is his biography. So let's start from Shakespeare's short biography. So William Shakespeare is in fact one of the greatest writers of all times. He is one of the greatest writers in English literature, and he earned worldwide fame as far as his dramas, his poetry, and his works are concerned. So William Shakespeare was born in 1564 and died in 1616. If we talk about his date of birth is not quite sure, because there is a confusion as far as his date of birth is concerned. So let's read it. William Shakespeare was born on April 22 or 23, 1564 at Stratford-upon-Avon. Well, this is the place where he was born. He was the son of John Shakespeare and Mary Arden. John Shakespeare was his father. Mary Arden was his mother. His father was a leather merchant, and he sold goods like purses, belts, and gloves. John Shakespeare also served in Stratford government as a member of the council, constable, chamberlain, alderman, and finally, in 1568, high bailiff, which is the equivalent of town mayor. Well, he has been in the service of government as well. John Shakespeare, William Shakespeare's father. William Shakespeare had his early education from a tutor. Although no attendance records for the period survive, most biographers agree that Shakespeare was educated at Stratford Grammar School, that became known as the King's New School of Stratford-upon-Avon in 1553 due to a charter by King Edward VI. Okay, so it is believed that William Wordsworth took his early education from Stratford Grammar School, that was later on known as the King's New School. Okay, at age 13, Shakespeare was forced to leave school because of his father's financial difficulties. Well, usually children attended school till 15th years of their age, but Shakespeare had to leave school earlier. He had to leave it at the age 13, and the reason was his father's financial difficulties. Shakespeare's daily activities after he left school are impossible to trace. Some people say that after school he was apprenticed to a butcher for an unknown period of time. They also say that he worked as a schoolmaster. Well, there are two myths about this span of time. When he left school, some people believe that he was apprenticed to a butcher. He became an apprentice, he became a pupil to a butcher, and some people say that he worked as a schoolmaster, but still there is a confusion about these two things. Nobody knows quite well about this, where actually Shakespeare worked or where actually he stayed after he left school. He re-emerged as a professional actor in the late 1580s. In November 1582, at age 18, he was obliged to marry Anne Hathaway, who was 26 years old. When Shakespeare married her, she was already conceiving a child. Their first child, Susanna, was born 6 months later. On February 21, 1585, twins Hamnet and Judith were born. Hamnet was the only son of Shakespeare, and he died in 1596 at the age of 11. And this was a great blow for Shakespeare. Okay. The periods between 1578 to 1582 and 1585 to 1592 are referred to as the lost years, because very little is known about Shakespeare's life during these two major spans of time. Well, these periods of time are actually known as lost years because nobody knows quite well about these two major spans of time, how Shakespeare spent this period of time, and where he spent his time during these two major spans of time. Nobody knows quite well about these things. One theory is that he might have gone into hiding for poaching game from the local landlord, Sir Thomas Lucy. Another possibility is that he might have been working as an assistant schoolmaster in Lancashire. Okay, some people say that he went into hiding because he was involved in poaching a deer from Sir Thomas Lucy. Okay, he was a local landlord, and because of his fear, he went into hiding. And another possibility, as it has been written here, that he might have been working as an assistant schoolmaster in Lancashire. By the early 1590s, documents show Shakespeare was a managing partner in the Lord Chamberlain's Men, an acting company in London with which he was connected for most of his career. So in early 1590s, Shakespeare emerged as an actor, and he was one of the major actors in an acting company in London with which he was connected for most of his career. Later on, the company changed its name to the King's Men following the crowning of King James I in 1603. It is not exactly known when Shakespeare began writing, but contemporary allusions and records of performances show that several of his plays were on the London stage by 1592, and he was now a recognized actor, and that year he wrote and produced his first play, Henry VI, Part 1. Okay. Here it has been told that Shakespeare's writing span of time, Shakespeare's writing career, is not actually well known to the people in the matter of the beginning of his career. When did he start writing is not actually known to anyone in particular, but here his first play has been mentioned, as you can see here. But contemporary allusions and records of performances show that several of his plays were on the London stage by 1592, and he was now a recognized actor, and that year he wrote and produced his first play, Henry VI, Part 1. Well, this is a history play because initially Shakespeare wrote histories, and afterwards he moved to tragedy. But at the beginning of his career, he usually wrote history plays. His surviving works consist of 38 plays. Remember, 38 plays survived. 154 sonnets. His surviving works consist of 38 plays, 154 sonnets, 2 long narrative poems, and several other poems. Most of his known work was produced between 1589 and 1613. So this is the basic span of time, major span of time, that is usually known as Shakespeare's the most active time, actually, where he produced a lot of work. He produced a lot of plays, poems, and sonnets. Okay, so you need to remember the number of plays and the number of sonnets, because in exams these questions are usually asked by the examiners. Shakespeare's surviving works consist of 38 plays, 154 sonnets, 2 long narrative poems, and several other poems. Okay, you need to remember this. Well, here is a list of Shakespeare's works. Tragedies. If we talk about his tragedies, there is a long list here: Antony and Cleopatra, Coriolanus, Hamlet, the play that we will discuss here, Julius Caesar, King Lear, Macbeth, Othello, Romeo and Juliet, Timon in Athens, Titus, Andronicus. These are his tragedies, and here is a long list of history plays: Henry the Fourth, Part 1, Henry the Fourth, Part 2, Henry the Fifth, Henry the Sixth, Part 1, Henry the Sixth, Part 2, Henry the Sixth, Part 3, Henry the Eighth, King John, Richard the Second, Richard the Third. So these are the history plays of Shakespeare. Here is a list of comedies: All Is Well That Ends Well, The Comedy of Errors, The Merchant of Venus, The Tempest, Twelfth Night, Winter's Tale, etc. If we talk about his poetry, he wrote sonnets, and 154 sonnets, as it has been mentioned here. 154 sonnets. Okay, A Lover's Complaint, Venus and Adonis, The Passionate Pilgrim, etc. These are his poetic works. Okay, so if we talk about his tragedies, the most famous tragedies are Hamlet, King Lear, Macbeth, Othello, and Julius Caesar. In fact, all his tragedies are famous, but these are actually the most famous, and they are the part of the syllabus in different universities around the globe. Okay. Well, Shakespeare has often been confused with Christopher Marlowe. Okay, there's a great confusion about Christopher Marlowe and Shakespeare, because most of the people thought that Shakespeare and Marlowe are the one person. Okay, they are not the different ones. Both Marlowe and Shakespeare are the names of one person. Okay. Well, why this confusion is there? Well, let's see. Both Marlowe and Shakespeare were professional actors. This is one similarity between Marlowe and Shakespeare. And the second similarity is that both have a same year of birth. Okay. When Marlowe died in 1593, this is the most important thing here. This is the basic thing that caused this theory to emerge. Okay, this myth to emerge. His death was a mystery. He worked as a Secret Service agent. He was stabbed by another Secret Service agent and died at the age of 29. Okay. And if we look at Shakespeare's emergence as a writer, it was in 1590s actually. Marlowe's death is crucial to several key questions about Shakespeare. For those who don't think that Shakespeare was Shakespeare, Marlowe's death allows one possible explanation. Marlowe faked his own demise to become Shakespeare. That brings up numerous questions about Shakespeare. Okay, many people believe that Marlowe faked his death, and afterwards he started writing with the name of Shakespeare. And usually most of the critics, most of the people believe that Shakespeare was Marlowe himself, because Marlowe died in 1593 and that was a fake death because he was a secret agent, and because of this job he had to he had to pretend to be Shakespeare. He had to disguise himself as Shakespeare. He had to change his identity after 1593 because of some governmental issues. Okay, so this is the basic confusion that caused this theory to emerge. Moreover, if we talk about the writing style of Marlowe and Shakespeare, they have got the same writing technique. Okay, Marlowe wrote in the blank verse. Okay, so did William Shakespeare. Both wrote in blank verse, and both have a grand and bombastic style of writing. All right, this is the basic reason, in fact, for which Shakespeare's works are attributed to Christopher Marlowe, and vice versa. Okay, so this was the basic confusion. There are some other people who think that Francis Bacon actually wrote the plays with the name of Shakespeare, because Francis Bacon has also got the same style as Shakespeare has got. Okay, so these are the myths about Shakespeare, but if we dig deep into the matter, it is quite obvious that Shakespeare existed, and he wrote these very great works. He produced these very great works of literature. Okay, all right. Now we are going to talk about the characteristics of Shakespearean tragedy, and Shakespeare as a tragedian. Tragedian is our new topic, and this is a very important topic as far as Shakespeare's tragedies are concerned. We need to know the characteristics of Shakespearean tragedy. Okay, the first characteristic of Shakespearean tragedy is that his tragedies are actually the stories of one man. All of his tragedies, if we look at them closely, they revolve around one towering figure, namely the hero, the protagonist of that tragedy. Okay, the stories of all the tragedies of Shakespeare revolve around one towering figure, the hero. All the other characters are minor characters in Shakespeare's tragedies. Okay, Bradley says it is only in the love tragedies, Romeo and Juliet and Antony and Cleopatra, that the heroine is as much the center of action as the hero. The rest, including Macbeth, are single stars. Okay, if we talk about Hamlet, if we talk about Othello, if we talk about Macbeth, if we talk about King Lear, okay, all these tragedies are written about one single person. Okay, secondly, suffering and death. A tragedy always ends in suffering and death, for otherwise it will not be a tragedy. Shakespearean tragedy always depicts the sufferings and death of the hero. Okay, if a play does not end in the death of the hero, it is not a tragedy at all in Shakespearean sense of tragedy. Well, Othello dies at the end of the play. Hamlet dies at the end of the play. Okay, King Lear dies, and all the heroes of Shakespeare die at the end of the plays. Okay, well, if we go back to the Greek tragedy, let's talk about Sophocles, Oedipus Rex. Okay, Oedipus Rex is a tragedy, but in Oedipus Rex, the hero Oedipus does not die at the end of the play. Okay, he remains alive even when the play ends. Okay, but in Shakespeare's tragedies, the hero eventually dies at the end of the play. Okay, and this is what differs Shakespeare's tragedy from Aristotelian tragedy. Okay, a hero is an outstanding figure. All the Shakespeare's characters, all the Shakespeare's heroes are outstanding figures. They are conspicuous personalities. They are renowned personalities. They are famous personalities. They are not ordinary persons. If we talk about Lear and Julius Caesar, they are kings. Hamlet is a prince. Othello is a general of the Republic of Venus. And in all the other dramas, the characters are of great importance, great significance. They are conspicuous personalities, and they are the important figures in society. They are not minor they are not ordinary people. Okay, so heroes in Shakespeare's plays are outstanding figures, and this is the similarity between Shakespeare and Sophocles. Shakespearean tragedy and Aristotelian tragedy, this is one similarity. The heroes in Aristotelian tragedies are, means in our Aristotelian concept of tragedy, the heroes are distinguished personalities. Okay, same is the case with the Shakespeare's tragedies. The heroes are distinguished persons in Shakespeare's tragedies. The causes of suffering and death and contributing factors for tragedy. Hamartia, tragic flaw, is the most important cause of suffering and death, is the most important factor that contributes to the tragedy of the hero. And hamartia or tragic flaw is also very important as far as Aristotelian concept of tragedy is concerned. Okay, in Aristotelian concept of tragedy, a hero must have a hamartia or tragic flaw or an error of judgment, due to which he falls the victim to misfortune. Okay, Lear's tragedy is a tragedy of dotage and short-sightedness. Okay, this is Lear's flaw, this is Lear's hamartia. Othello's tragedy is the tragedy of credulity. Okay, he becomes suspicious about his wife because he believes in the conspiracies of Iago. He falls the victim to the conspiracies of Iago because of his credulity, because he is ready to believe each and everything. Okay, he does not become suspicious about Iago's activities. He does not become doubtful about Iago's conspiracy, but he goes on believing in him, and this is what causes his tragedy. This is Othello's tragic flaw. Hamlet's, that of indecision. Macbeth's, that of ambition, and so on. If we talk about Hamlet, and this is very necessary to talk about Hamlet here, because in the next lecture we'll talk about Hamlet. Okay, and this would be our topic of discussion in the next lecture. So Hamlet cannot make a decision about taking revenge for his father's death. Okay, he procrastinates till the very end of the play. He is unable to decide whether to take revenge immediately or not, whether to kill Claudius immediately or not. He is unable to decide it, and this is what causes his tragedy. This indecision, this procrastination causes the deaths of so many other characters. Okay, and this is the hamartia or tragic flaw of Hamlet. Then there are some contributing factors for tragedy: fate, chance, accident, coincidence, and the supernatural are the contributing factors in Shakespearean tragedies. Okay, in Shakespearean tragedies, fate does not always dominate. Okay, character himself usually is the cause of his tragedy. The hero usually is the cause of his tragedy. His hamartia, his tragic flaw, his weakness actually is the cause of his tragedy. Fate, chance, accident, coincidence are there, but they do not dominate in Shakespearean tragedy. But in Aristotelian concept of tragedy, or if we talk about Sophocles' tragedies, Sophocles' tragedies, in his tragedies, fate dominates. In Greek tragedy, fate dominates. Okay, character. There is something wrong on the part of the character, but it is fate that causes the tragedy of the hero. But here in Shakespearean concept of tragedy, fate is there, chance is there, accident is there, coincidence is there, the supernatural is there, but these things do not dominate. Okay, it is the character whose hamartia, whose tragic flaw, whose weakness cause the tragedy of the character. Okay, the next, the conflict in Shakespearean tragedy. If we look closely, if we observe closely the tragedies of Shakespeare, conflict is the essence of Shakespearean tragedy. Okay. Well, conflict is actually the mental struggle that results from incompatible or opposing needs. Okay, conflict is the mental struggle resulting from incompatible or opposing needs, drives, wishes, or external or internal demands. Okay, well, conflict is the mental struggle that occurs due to different desires, wishes, opposing desires or wishes. Okay, so in Shakespeare's tragedies, conflict is omnipresent. Okay, both external and internal conflict. Again, I would like to quote Hamlet here. Hamlet is always in the situation in which he fights with himself. He is always in the state of battle that is going in his innermost self. Okay, he is unable to decide whether to kill Claudius or not. Okay, he is unable to take any step, and he is not able to make up his mind about anything. So this is because of the conflict. There are several ideas, there are several opposing ideas that occur in his mind, and they cause conflict for Hamlet. Okay, next we'll talk about Shakespeare and Aristotelian concept of tragedy. What are the similarities and dissimilarities between Shakespearean and Aristotelian concept of tragedy? Well, if we talk about hero, we have already discussed that hero in Shakespearean tragedy and Aristotelian concept of tragedy, hero is a distinguished personality. Plot, Aristotle gives a lot of importance to plot. He says that a tragedy can be without a character but not without a plot. Okay, it was said by Aristotle, and it was said only to increase the importance of plot. Okay, Aristotle favors the complex plot. He does not go in the favor of simple plot. He favors complex plot. And Aristotle does not favor the subplots or episodic plots. And if we talk about Shakespeare's plots, they are also well knitted, they are also well constructed. But Shakespeare, there are some plays in which Shakespeare uh, mentions or adds episodes. There are some subplots. They cannot be called subplots, but in Shakespeare's plots, the comic events are there in Shakespearean tragedies. But in Aristotelian concept of tragedy, a tragedy must be serious from the beginning to the end. But Shakespeare gives comic relief to his audience. Okay, he adds some comic events in his plot. Well, next is the three unities. Aristotle talks about three unities. Three unities are unity of time, unity of action, and unity of place. As far as Shakespeare's plays are concerned, unity of time is not there. Unity of action is there. Unity of place is also not there. Aristotle says that a play must consist of, a play must end within 24 hours. This is what Aristotle says. A play must end within 24 hours. This is called unity of time. Unity of action, unity of action means that there must be one action in the play, and all the other actions that take place in the drama must be interlinked with the main action of the play. Well, this is found in Shakespeare's plays. And unity of place means that the action must take place within one single area, within one single city. If we talk about Oedipus Rex, the whole of the action takes place in Thebes. Okay, but in Shakespeare's plays, unity of place is not there, because the characters continue to move from one place to another. The action continues to move from one place to another. So unity of place, unity of time are not there, but definitely unity of action is there. Okay, hero's death. In Greek tragedies, death of the hero is not necessary at the end of the play. As I have already discussed this thing, that in Shakespeare's tragedies, hero dies at the end. Okay, but in Greek concept of tragedy or in Aristotelian concept of tragedy, death of the hero is not essential. Then feelings of fear and pity. Well, this is the very major function of tragedy, that tragedy raises the feelings of fear and pity among the audience, and all the tragedies of Shakespeare succeed in raising the feelings of fear and pity among the audience. Okay, so dear students, this was all about today's lecture, and I hope you have understood it very well. Inshallah, see you tomorrow with a new lecture and with new hopes. See you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye bye.